What would you do if the one person you never truly forgot suddenly appeared in front of you after 15 years? Olivia Parker never expected to face that question. The airport was crowded with travelers rushing toward departure gates, dragging suitcases across polished floors and checking departure boards overhead. Olivia barely noticed any of it. Her attention was fixed on the stack of overdue bills tucked inside her purse and the growing anxiety she carried everywhere these days. At 33 years old, she had imagined a different life. Not a perfect one, but certainly not this. She had spent the last 8 years raising her son Ethan on her own while balancing 2 jobs and constantly calculating how to stretch every dollar a little further. Some months were easier than others. This month was not one of them. She adjusted the strap of her worn travel bag and glanced toward the gate where she and Ethan would soon board a flight to visit her mother in Denver. It was not a vacation. Her mother had recently undergone a medical procedure, and Olivia was using what little savings she had to make the trip. Nearby, 8-year-old Ethan sat reading a science magazine, completely unaware of the financial stress weighing on his mother. Olivia smiled as she watched him. No matter how difficult life became, he remained her reason to keep moving forward. The airport loudspeaker announced another boarding update. Olivia checked her watch and headed toward a nearby coffee stand. As she waited in line, something unusual caught her attention. A small group of people had gathered near the entrance of a private lounge. Several travelers appeared excited, whispering among themselves while glancing towards someone who had just arrived. Olivia paid little attention at first. Airports were full of celebrities, athletes, and business executives. None of that mattered to her. Then she heard a familiar laugh. Her heart stopped. Slowly, she turned her head. Across the terminal stood a man she had not seen in 15 years. For a moment, the noise of the airport seemed to disappear completely. The travelers vanished. The announcements faded. Even time itself felt suspended. Ryan Mitchell. The name echoed through her mind like a memory she had spent years trying to bury. He looked older now, more confident, dressed in an elegant navy suit that suggested success and authority. But his face was unmistakable. Olivia felt a rush of emotions she could not control. Surprise, confusion, nostalgia, pain. Ryan had been her first love. The boy who once dreamed beside her during long college nights. The boy who promised they would build a future together. The boy who had disappeared from her life without explanation. Before she could look away, Ryan turned in her direction. Their eyes met across the terminal. 15 years vanished in a single second. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Olivia could barely breathe. Then a nearby airport screen suddenly displayed a business news segment. A photograph of Ryan appeared above a headline identifying him as the founder and chief executive officer of a multi-million-dollar company. Olivia stared at the screen in disbelief. She had come to the airport worried about bills and responsibilities. She never expected to come face to face with the greatest unanswered question of her life. And she certainly never imagined that the young man she once loved had become someone the entire country seemed to know. Olivia looked away first. The moment felt too overwhelming, too sudden, too impossible. She grabbed her coffee and quickly returned to where Ethan was sitting near the gate. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the cup on the nearby table. "Mom, are you okay?" Ethan asked, looking up from his magazine. Olivia forced a smile. "I am fine, sweetheart." But she was not fine. Her heart was racing. 15 years of unanswered questions had suddenly come rushing back into her life without warning. She sat down beside her son and stared through the large airport windows at the planes parked outside. Memories she had worked hard to bury began surfacing one after another. Ryan had once been her entire world. They met during their sophomore year of college. He was ambitious, intelligent, and endlessly optimistic. Together, they spent countless evenings studying, dreaming about their future, and making promises they believed would last forever. Back then, neither of them had money. They shared cheap meals, tiny apartments, and plans for a life they would build together someday. Then everything changed. During their final year, Ryan suddenly disappeared from her life. Calls went unanswered. Messages were never returned. Weeks turned into months. Eventually, Olivia stopped trying. The silence hurt more than any argument could have. She convinced herself that he had simply moved on. As the boarding area slowly filled with passengers, Olivia tried focusing on the present instead of the past. The present was difficult enough. Her rent had increased 3 months earlier. Medical expenses from Ethan's recent asthma treatments had drained most of her savings. She worked long hours at a medical billing office during the day and often accepted freelance bookkeeping projects at night. Every month felt like a balancing act. Yet despite everything, she remained determined to provide a stable life for her son. "Mom, look." Ethan pointed toward a large television screen hanging above the terminal. A business interview was playing. Ryan appeared on the screen once again, speaking confidently about leadership, innovation, and company growth. The caption below identified him as one of the country's most successful entrepreneurs. Nearby travelers watched with admiration. Some even took photographs of the screen. Olivia felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride, shock, sadness, curiosity. This was not the young man she remembered. Or perhaps it was exactly the same young man who had simply achieved every dream he once talked about. Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Olivia." Her breath caught. She slowly turned around. Ryan stood only a few feet away. Up close, the years seemed to disappear even faster. His expression reflected the same disbelief she felt. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ryan smiled softly. "I cannot believe it is really you." Olivia struggled to find words. "I was thinking the same thing." Ryan glanced toward Ethan. "Are you traveling with family?" Olivia looked at her son and nodded. "Yes." Something flickered across Ryan's face. Surprise, perhaps. Or curiosity. Before either could continue, an announcement echoed through the terminal. Ryan's flight was preparing for boarding. He looked disappointed. "I have to go." Olivia felt an unexpected sense of relief and regret at the same time. Ryan reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a business card. "I know this is sudden, but I would really like to talk." Olivia stared at the card after he walked away. Then she looked up and saw Ryan glance back one final time before disappearing into the crowd. What neither of them realized was that this chance encounter was only the beginning of a story that should have ended 15 years ago. The flight to Denver should have given Olivia time to relax, but her mind refused to cooperate. As Ethan slept beside her with his head resting against the window, she stared at the business card Ryan had given her. She had looked at it at least 20 times since leaving the airport. Ryan Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer. The words still felt unreal. 15 years ago, they had been two college students sharing dreams over inexpensive coffee and late-night study sessions. Now his name appeared on television screens and business magazines. Olivia slipped the card back into her purse and tried focusing on the clouds outside. It did not work. Every memory seemed determined to return. After arriving in Denver, she and Ethan spent the afternoon with her mother. The visit was comforting, but even her mother noticed that something seemed different. During dinner, she watched Olivia carefully before finally asking, "What is going on?" Olivia hesitated. "I saw someone at the airport." Her mother smiled knowingly. "Someone important?" Olivia looked down at her plate. "Ryan." The room became quiet. Her mother remembered him well. Years ago, she had believed Ryan would become part of the family. "How did he look?" she asked gently. Olivia laughed softly. "Successful." Her mother raised an eyebrow. "And?" Olivia sighed. "Happy, maybe. I am not sure." That night, after Ethan had fallen asleep in the guest room, Olivia sat alone on the back porch wrapped in a blanket. The cool Colorado air felt refreshing. Her phone buzzed unexpectedly. "Hey." Message appeared from an unfamiliar number. For several seconds, she simply stared at the screen. Then she opened it. It was Ryan. The message was simple. "I know this might be unexpected, but I am glad I saw you today." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. She considered ignoring it. Life had taught her to be cautious. Yet another part of her remembered the boy she once trusted completely. After several minutes, she finally typed a short response. "I was surprised too." The reply came almost immediately. "I have wanted to ask you something for 15 years. Olivia stared at the screen. Her heart suddenly felt much heavier. She already knew the question before he asked it. "Why did you disappear from my life?" Across the country, Ryan sat alone in a hotel suite overlooking Chicago. Despite a schedule filled with meetings and responsibilities, he had spent the entire evening thinking about the airport, about Olivia, about the son who had been traveling with her. Most of all, he had been thinking about the confusion he saw in her eyes. 15 years earlier, Ryan had experienced his own version of heartbreak. One day Olivia had simply stopped responding. His calls went unanswered. His letters received no reply. Eventually, he convinced himself she no longer wanted him in her life. Yet seeing her again had shattered that belief. Neither of them had looked like people who chose to walk away. Ryan stared at his phone, waiting for her response. Minutes passed. Then a message finally appeared. I could ask you the exact same question. Ryan read the words twice. For the first time in 15 years, he began to suspect that the story he believed about their breakup might not have been true at all. Neither Olivia nor Ryan slept particularly well that night. Their brief exchange of messages had opened a door both of them thought was permanently closed. The next morning, Olivia woke before sunrise and quietly made coffee in her mother's kitchen. Through the window, she watched the first lights spread across the neighborhood, while her thoughts remained fixed on one question. If Ryan had not chosen to leave, then what had actually happened 15 years ago? The possibility unsettled her, more than she wanted to admit. For years, she had built her life around a version of the past that suddenly seemed uncertain. Later that morning, while Ethan played board games with his grandmother, Olivia found herself reading through old messages stored on an aging email account she had not opened in years. Most of the correspondence had long been deleted, but she searched anyway. Some part of her hoped to find an answer hidden among forgotten memories. She found nothing. Meanwhile, Ryan sat aboard a private flight returning to Seattle. The city skyline slowly appeared beneath the clouds as he reviewed documents for an upcoming meeting. Normally, work demanded his complete attention. Today, he could barely focus. His assistant noticed immediately. You have reread the same page 3 times, she said with a smile. Ryan laughed quietly. I know. He hesitated before adding. Have you ever spent years believing something happened one way, and then suddenly realized you might have been wrong? His assistant looked curious, but did not press further. Ryan appreciated that. Some questions were too personal to explain. By the time Olivia returned home 2 days later, life quickly resumed its familiar pace. Bills waited on the kitchen counter. Laundry needed attention. Work emails filled her inbox. Yet despite the responsibilities surrounding her, she could not stop thinking about Ryan. On Tuesday afternoon, while she was organizing records at the medical billing office, her phone vibrated. A message appeared. I will be in your area tomorrow. Would you be willing to have coffee with me? Olivia stared at the screen. Part of her wanted to decline. Reopening old wounds rarely ended well. But another part of her knew she would regret refusing. After several minutes, she finally responded with a simple yes. The following afternoon arrived faster than expected. Olivia chose a quiet neighborhood coffee shop halfway between her office and Ethan's school. When she walked inside, Ryan was already there. For a brief moment, she saw not the successful executive everyone admired, but the young man she once knew. He stood as she approached and smiled warmly. The conversation began. Cautiously, they spoke about work, family, and the passing years. Ryan shared stories about building his company from almost nothing. Olivia described raising Ethan and managing life as a single mother. Surprisingly, the conversation felt natural, comfortable even. Then Ryan asked the question neither of them had been able to avoid. Why did you stop answering my calls? Olivia stared at him in disbelief. Ryan, I waited months for you to call me. Silence filled the space between them. Both looked genuinely shocked by the other's answer. For several seconds, neither knew what to say. The realization was becoming impossible to ignore. 15 years ago, something had happened. Something neither of them understood. And for the first time, both were determined to discover the truth. The conversation lingered in Olivia's mind long after she left the coffee shop. For 15 years, she had carried a quiet resentment toward Ryan, believing he had abandoned their future without explanation. Yet the confusion in his eyes had looked genuine. More importantly, his story matched her own. He believed she had disappeared. She believed he had disappeared. Somehow, both of them had spent years mourning the same relationship while blaming each other for its ending. The realization felt both comforting and unsettling. A week passed before they met again. During that time, Ryan respected her space. He sent only a few simple messages asking how she and Ethan were doing. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt calculated. Olivia appreciated that. One Saturday afternoon, she was helping Ethan assemble a model airplane at the kitchen table when her phone buzzed. Ryan had sent a photograph. It showed an old college notebook he had recently found while cleaning storage boxes. Across the front cover, written in faded ink, was Olivia's name surrounded by small doodles from years ago. Olivia stared at the image and laughed softly. Ethan immediately became curious. "Who is Ryan?" he asked. Olivia hesitated. "Someone I knew a long time ago." Ethan grinned. "Someone important?" Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "Maybe." A few days later, Ryan invited them to a science museum hosting a special aerospace exhibit. Olivia nearly declined. The practical side of her worried about becoming emotionally attached again. But Ethan's excitement made the decision impossible. The moment he heard the words aerospace exhibit, he practically bounced across the room. On Saturday morning, they arrived at the museum. Ethan immediately raced toward an interactive flight simulator while Olivia and Ryan followed at a slower pace. Watching Ryan interact with her son surprised her. He was patient, attentive, and genuinely interested in everything Ethan had to say. When Ethan launched into a detailed explanation about aircraft engines, Ryan listened with complete focus. Most adults smiled politely and changed the subject. Ryan asked follow-up questions. For the first time, Olivia noticed how naturally they connected. Several hours passed before anyone realized it. They explored exhibits, shared lunch, and laughed more than Olivia expected. At one point, Ethan disappeared briefly into a hands-on engineering activity area. Ryan and Olivia found themselves standing alone near a display of historic aircraft. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ryan smiled. "He is a great kid." Pride filled Olivia's expression. "He is the best thing that ever happened to me." Ryan nodded. "I can see that." There was something in his voice that made Olivia glance at him more carefully. Not pity, not obligation, genuine admiration. Later, as they prepared to leave, Ethan tugged on Ryan's sleeve. "Are you coming with us next time too?" Ryan looked surprised by the question. "If your mom says it is okay." Ethan turned immediately toward Olivia. "Can he?" Olivia laughed. "We will see." Ryan smiled, but something thoughtful lingered behind his eyes. Driving home that evening, Olivia realized how different the day had felt. For the first time in years, she had spent several hours without thinking about bills, work, or responsibilities. Yet as she tucked Ethan into bed later that night, he asked a question she never expected. "Mom, did you and Ryan know each other before I was born?" Olivia froze. She looked at her son for a long moment before answering. "Yes, we did." Ethan smiled sleepily. "I thought so." Then he closed his eyes. Olivia sat quietly beside him, suddenly wondering whether the past was about to reveal far more than either she or Ryan were prepared to face. The question Ethan asked lingered in Olivia's thoughts for days. She had spent years carefully separating her past from her present, believing it was the safest way to move forward. Yet now those two worlds were slowly beginning to collide. Ryan was no longer just a memory. He was becoming part of their lives again, and with every conversation, the mystery surrounding their breakup felt more impossible to ignore. A few evenings later, Olivia received an unexpected call from her mother. After discussing ordinary family matters, her mother hesitated before mentioning something she had recently discovered while cleaning out old boxes in the attic. "I found a stack of letters," she said. "Most of them are from years ago." Olivia smiled. "You save everything." Her mother laughed softly. "Apparently I do." Then her voice became more thoughtful. "One of them has Ryan's name on the envelope." Olivia froze. "What? I have not opened it." "I thought you should know." For several seconds Olivia could not speak. Her heart began racing. 15 years earlier, physical letters had still been a normal part of life. Ryan had claimed he called and wrote. Olivia had always believed he was mistaken. Now she was no longer sure. The following weekend, she drove to her mother's house alone while Ethan attended a birthday party. Her mother handed her a small box filled with old photographs, greeting cards, and unopened envelopes. Olivia carefully sorted through them. Then she found it. Her name appeared on the front in Ryan's unmistakable handwriting. The postmark was dated 15 years earlier. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter. As she began reading, tears immediately filled her eyes. Ryan had written about a job opportunity that required him to relocate temporarily. He explained that he loved her and wanted them to build a future together after the move. He had included his new address, phone number, and a promise that he would return. There was no goodbye, no rejection, no ending. Quite the opposite. The letter was filled with hope. Olivia sat in stunned silence. Everything she believed about that period of her life suddenly collapsed. Ryan had not abandoned her, at least not according to the letter she now held in her hands. Later that evening, she called him. Ryan answered almost immediately. The moment he heard her voice, he knew something had changed. Olivia told him about the letter. Silence followed. Then Ryan spoke quietly. I wrote 3 letters. Olivia closed her eyes. I never received any of them. Ryan sounded just as shocked as she felt. For years he had assumed she ignored every attempt to contact her. I waited for a response, he admitted. When nothing came, I thought you had moved on. Neither knew exactly how the letters had disappeared. But one thing was becoming painfully clear. Their relationship had not ended because they stopped loving each other. It had ended because communication between them somehow vanished. The discovery brought relief, but it also raised new questions. If neither of them chose to walk away, why had every connection been broken? As the conversation continued, Olivia noticed something else. For the first time since reconnecting, neither of them sounded guarded. The walls built over 15 years were beginning to crack, and neither realized that one final piece of the past was still waiting to be uncovered. The discovery of the letter changed everything. For days, Olivia found herself rereading the faded pages whenever she had a quiet moment. Each sentence felt like a window into a life that might have been. The pain she once carried toward Ryan slowly transformed into something else entirely. Regret. Not regret for loving him, but regret for all the years they had lost because of a misunderstanding neither of them created. Ryan felt the same. The more they talked, the more impossible it became to ignore how much of their past still remained alive beneath the surface. One Saturday afternoon, Ryan invited Olivia and Ethan to a small aviation festival outside the city. Ethan had been talking about airplanes nonstop for weeks, making the invitation impossible to refuse. The event was filled with vintage aircraft, flight demonstrations, and educational exhibits. Watching Ethan run excitedly from one display to another made both adults smile. For a few hours, everything felt surprisingly normal. As the afternoon sun settled lower in the sky, Ethan joined a group activity where children built model gliders. That left Olivia and Ryan walking alone along a quiet section of the airfield. The sound of distant aircraft engines filled the background. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. I spent years wondering what I could have done differently. Olivia looked at him. So did I. Ryan nodded. After I moved, I waited every day for a reply. His voice remained calm, but she could hear the sadness underneath. When nothing came, I thought you had chosen another path. Olivia swallowed hard. I thought the same thing about you. The simplicity of the truth somehow made it hurt even more. They had both suffered for years because of assumptions. As they continued walking, Ryan stopped beside a historic aircraft on display. There is something else I need to tell you, he said quietly. Olivia immediately sensed the seriousness in his voice. Ryan took a slow breath. I almost came back. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? He looked out toward the runway. About a year after I moved, I flew back to see you. I went to your apartment. Olivia stared at him in shock. You did? Ryan nodded. A neighbor told me you had moved away. Olivia felt her heart sink. She remembered that period clearly. Shortly after her father passed away, financial difficulties forced her family to relocate temporarily. I never knew. Ryan gave a sad smile. Neither did I. I thought it was another sign that you wanted a fresh start without me. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Olivia laughed softly through unexpected tears. We were both terrible detectives. Ryan laughed too. The tension eased slightly, but the emotional weight remained. Later that evening, after returning home, Olivia tucked Ethan into bed. Before falling asleep, he asked a question that caught her completely off guard. Mom, do you still love Ryan? Olivia froze. Children had a way of asking the hardest questions with complete innocence. She looked at her son for several seconds before answering honestly. I do not know. Ethan smiled sleepily. I think you do. Then he rolled over and closed his eyes. Olivia sat quietly beside him, unable to dismiss his words. Because deep down, she was beginning to fear that her son might be right. Over the following weeks, something subtle began to change. The uncertainty that once surrounded Olivia and Ryan slowly gave way to honesty. There were no dramatic declarations, no grand promises, only a steady rebuilding of trust that had been interrupted years earlier. They spoke often, sometimes about the past, sometimes about ordinary things. The conversations felt surprisingly easy. More than once, Olivia caught herself smiling when his name appeared on her phone. Ryan noticed changes too. For the first time in years, his success no longer felt like the most important part of his life. One evening, Olivia received an unexpected notice from her apartment management company. Her rent would increase again at the end of the lease term. She stared at the letter in frustration. Expenses had already been stretching her budget to the limit. The thought of finding a new place while balancing work and caring for Ethan felt overwhelming. She did not mention it to Ryan. Pride had always made it difficult for her to discuss financial struggles. Yet somehow he sensed that something was wrong. During dinner a few days later, Ethan accidentally revealed the situation. "Mama's been looking at apartment listings every night," he said while eating pizza. Olivia immediately gave him a look. Ethan realized his mistake and lowered his eyes. Ryan remained quiet for a moment. Then he gently changed the subject. Later, after Ethan had gone to another room, Ryan spoke carefully. "You know you do not have to carry everything alone." Olivia sighed. "I have been carrying everything alone for a long time." Ryan nodded. "I know." There was no judgment in his voice, only understanding. That conversation stayed with her, not because Ryan offered solutions, but because he respected her independence while still wanting to help. A few days later, another unexpected piece of the past surfaced. While organizing old family documents, Olivia's mother found a small journal that had belonged to Olivia's late father. Inside was a folded note attached between two pages. The note immediately caught Olivia's attention because Ryan's name appeared on it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message had been written by her father shortly before his death. In it, he apologized for something he had never confessed. Years earlier, he had received one of Ryan's letters while Olivia was away. At the time, believing Olivia needed stability rather than a long-distance relationship, he chose not to give it to her immediately. He intended to discuss it later. Then illness and family hardship consumed his attention. The letter was forgotten. Olivia sat in stunned silence. Tears filled her eyes. Her father had loved her deeply and always wanted the best for her. Yet one well-intentioned decision had altered the course of two lives. That evening, she showed the note to Ryan. He read it quietly before looking up. Neither blamed her father. The circumstances were too complicated for anger. Instead, both felt the weight of lost years settling over them. "We cannot get those years back," Ryan said softly. Olivia nodded. "No." Then she surprised herself by reaching for his hand. "But maybe we do not have to keep losing more." Ryan looked at her for a long moment. In that simple gesture, something unspoken finally became clear. The past had explained why they were separated. Now they had to decide what to do with the future standing directly in front of them. Spring arrived, almost unnoticed. The rain that had dominated much of the winter slowly gave way to brighter skies, and life began to feel different for Olivia in ways she had never expected. The challenges had not disappeared. She still worked hard, still managed responsibilities, and still worried about the future from time to time. But for the first time in many years, she no longer felt like she was carrying every burden alone. Ryan had become a steady presence in both her life and Ethan's. He never tried to replace anyone. He never pushed too hard or moved too fast. Instead, he simply showed up. School events, science fairs, weekend activities, ordinary dinners, and quiet conversations. Little by little, trust had grown into something much deeper. One Saturday morning, Ethan rushed into the kitchen holding a flyer from school. "The Aviation Museum is hosting a special event at the airport next month," he announced excitedly. Olivia smiled. "That sounds perfect for you." Ethan grinned. "Ryan has to come too." Ryan laughed from across the table. "I appreciate that I apparently have no choice." The event quickly became a date everyone looked forward to. Several weeks later, they arrived at the airport where aviation exhibits, educational programs, and historic aircraft displays filled the terminal. The moment Olivia stepped inside, a familiar feeling washed over her. This was the same airport where she had seen Ryan for the first time in 15 years. The same place where a chance encounter had changed everything. Ryan noticed her expression. "You are thinking about it too, aren't you?" Olivia smiled softly. "Yes." Ethan immediately became distracted by a flight simulator exhibit and disappeared toward it with enthusiastic determination. Ryan and Olivia followed at a slower pace. As they walked through the terminal, memories blended with the present. The airport no longer represented loss or unanswered questions. It had become the place where their story found its way back to life. Later that afternoon, after Ethan joined a youth aviation workshop, Ryan asked Olivia if she would walk with him for a few minutes. She agreed. Together, they made their way toward a quiet observation area overlooking the runways. Airplanes moved across the distance while sunlight reflected off the glass walls. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ryan turned toward her. "There is something I have wanted to say for a long time." Olivia felt her heart begin to race. Ryan smiled softly. "For years, I thought I had lost the most important person in my life. Then one day I saw you standing in an airport and realized I had been given a second chance I never expected." He reached into his jacket pocket and carefully removed a small ring box. Olivia immediately covered her mouth with her hands. Tears filled her eyes before he even opened it. "I cannot change the years we lost," Ryan continued, "but I would like to spend every year ahead making new memories with you." He opened the box. "Olivia Parker, will you marry me?" At that exact moment, Ethan appeared nearby after finishing his workshop. His eyes widened the instant he understood what was happening. Olivia laughed through tears and looked from Ryan to her son. Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Say yes," he whispered. Olivia smiled at both of them. Then she gave the answer her heart had known for weeks. "Yes." Ethan cheered so loudly that several nearby travelers began smiling and applauding. Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a warm embrace. Standing together in the same airport where fate had reunited them, they finally understood something simple but powerful. Sometimes life does not give people the story they planned. Sometimes it gives them a better one.